properly because we found that exists a great quantity of aspects that should be taken into account before making a precipitated use of the high military figures that can be used in other problems, more real and urgent as social, sanitary, food insufficiency, and illiteracy problems. Between these aspects highlights the prioritize in the decreasing of greenhouse effect gases, about the adaptation in the developing countries as a form to repair a damage, but also can be prevented with the creation of new policies of mitigation that can be developed by the countries as an individual and taking into account the necessities of each nation. It's also noticeable that importance of the actions taken by individuals instead of a great investment, because the problem is rooted not in the type of energy we are using, but in the saving of the energy no matter the source of it. On the other hand, we should take into account that in many cases the economical aids are seen as an opportunity for several political leaders of obtaining resources for their own benefit. Besides, it's an opportunity to some organizations that encourage technologies that not always works with the only objective of obtaining a profit from a problematic that can be fictitious. Exist scientific arguments and studies that establish that the climate change is a natural process not included in the geological cycles that should be analyzed deeper to avoid a precipitation and a possible waste of economical resources. The effects of adaptation could realize even more greenhouse effects. For example, the creation of nuclear plants, because the construction of these requires a great usage of fossil fuels. The climate change is hard to predict, and this could deviate or localize in a wrong way the resources. That, if the climate change is really an effect produced artificially by human, or if it will bring negative consequences. Taking into account the previous aspects and others that because the time are impossible to expose, are why we consider that it's necessary to refocus the economical aid issue that are pretend to give by the Annex I nations to the developing countries in order to adapt to the climate change. Thank you.
Third, affirmative team. Will you address your question to the opponent team? You have 30 seconds for your question and 2 minutes to present your answer.
After listening to your arguments in your constructive speech, comes to my mind what is written in the climate change adaptation plan, which reads the following: the more we mitigate, the less we have to deny. The issue here is not whether to mitigate or not, it's whether to annex one country to invest in adaptation strategies in developing countries. Well, mitigation is global and adaptation is global until now. So don't you think that it's why new climate agreement must place adaptation on equal footing with mitigation? Furthermore, it does not address the issue of climate justice and human rights in developed perspective.
Adaptation is not a local issue because technologies are developed by the states and mitigation actions are more useful and easier because we as a person can help in climate change mitigation, while we cannot adapt without government help.
Opponent team will address your question to the affirmative team. You have 30 seconds for your question and 2 minutes to present your answer.
How do you pretend the world to adapt to climate change in an efficient way, if that has already been tried in August of 2005, when the Katrina hurricane arrived to New Orleans? They used adaptation measures and retained wells over the Mississippi River to prevent the desbordation, but all the resources were lost. Also, the reconstruction of the city cost around $8,900 billion and more than 1,800 people died. How did you prove that this success will not repeat
if the world tries to adapt to the climate change?
En este momento, el equipo ponente acaba de lanzar su pregunta al equipo afirmativo y ya se toman un minuto y medio para discutirlo. Are you ready? Okay.
We are totally sure that this is not going to repeat. Well, you say that this happened in 2005, right? Well, we're now in 2010. Come on. There has been 5 years of difference. Science has advanced, and we cannot deny that, so I'm sure that writing this plan of adaptation, we can reach what we propose.
It's time for the rebuttal speech by member 2 of each team. Member 2, Valentina Vivas of the affirmative side.
En las traducciones que se entregaron se encuentran cada uno de los discursos. Vamos a empezar con el discurso de refutación por parte del equipo afirmativo.
It will be absurd to pretend that denying the incidence of climate change, pretending that it is part of a natural cycle and not a product of the Industrial Revolution, or to assume that just being implementing prevent control policies, we can reduce the incidence of the climate change over the human race and the majority of vegetable and animal species. It's a position that represents a high risk for mankind at a short term because it is currently happening. The number and magnitude of natural disasters such as flooding, drought, hurricanes, and the consequences that derive from these ones, like hunger, population displacement, economic collapse, and epidemics are rising. Therefore, we stay firm in our position of not only create awareness and implement preventive policies, but we also strongly believe in generating investment programs so that developed countries help the developing countries to contract the negative effects we are suffering now, and yes, are impossible to prevent. We also consider that adapting to the different technologies, infrastructures, and urban designs, based on scientific prediction models that have been proved at different scales, and that allows us to have certainty that the adapt designs are eventually a real solution, and not a blind and irresponsible investment of major economic resources. It is an action that requires to be prioritized. It is vital for us to understand that climate change has been set into motion, so it's inevitable. But we can still reduce the harmful effects to human welfare and to the environment by generating adaptive investments, not only advocates for gas-reduced policies. Another flawed argument, in our opinion, is the one that states that investment in adaptation will generate an economical slowdown or market freezer. All this reflects in a reduction of the GDP. We believe that these predictions are not necessary to the